Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I'm Mike Casazza here on a Monday morning with Chris Anderson. Chris, we're out of answers. A ton of questions have piled up just everywhere around us. Feels like for months I've been trying to clear the deck. Can't. Every time we think we have, boy, new questions. And now it's I don't know, when does recruiting end for football? Does it? And when will this end for basketball? Up and down, up and down. Lots of curves in this road here. So, hey, man, good time to do the old Monday morning mailbag here because lots of questions. We will try to plow through as many as we can here because I'm as curious as anybody else for a lot of these topics, too.
Well, I'm sure you're ready for this one, Mike, because this could not be any more WVU fan if there ever was one. Not only the question, but the fact that it was the most upvoted question
God,
on the board, which again,
I, I know it is.
we're going in order here of most upvoted, and then we'll kind of mix them in at the end. But the top few are the most upvoted by other users. From WVU Fan 8138. What is your concern level on DeVries leaving for Iowa if Fran McCaffrey retires or gets fired this year?
From 1 to 10, like 70, because I do not want to do a hot board again.
It's not your
We're doing
personal,
short answers today, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Listen, I
your
mean,
personal
you have to be.
concern.
You have to be concerned. That's all. Like you have to be. It's just I don't I can't speak to what's going to happen, anything like that, because I just don't know. But sure, if the Iowa job comes open, a guy who's from Iowa and has coached almost his entire life in that area, um, yeah, that would certainly get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to it. Like, I feel like it's a little bit panicky to start worrying about it right now, but like you said, like this would be similar to say a job opening and Rich Rodriguez coaching somewhere else, a job opening in West Virginia. Like, what's the concern that Rich Rodriguez is going to leave and go back to West Virginia? Well, there you go. This is similar.
Mhm.
Um, Next most upvoted question. L. Schaefer. Do you have any updates on the proposed football or basketball venue upgrades?
What I don't know if he told this to me in person or if this came out of a news conference, but Rem Baker had said at some point during the football search, maybe after, maybe before, I'm not sure, but that I believe he said like in January or after the start of the year, they would have some sort of updated plan or idea or philosophy about premium seating for football. That's not brand new thinking. That's something they've been talking about for a while, but they do intend to do something there. Where, how, when, how much, I don't know, but that is certainly their goal there too. Apart from that, I don't know what else they need. Like I know that Neil Brown had talked about they need new grass at the or actually turf at the practice facility. I'm not sure if that functionally works, but that's something that he talked about. But apart from that, they can't do a whole lot. They probably won't do a whole lot because the big ticket item is certainly going to be premium seating. And then I think they made some pretty good aesthetic changes to basketball in the last couple of years with the seats, some of the club level stuff, the scoreboard, some of the I don't know, just buy a ticket, experience this, that sort of stuff. I would probably try to fix the shot clock if I could. Seems like a small fix and a big convenience if they could pull that one off. But again, the premium seating there, they could do bang for the buck. I'm not sure where that exists right now. You'd like to see more prolonged attendance, and if this continues to roll like it is, like for 1 year, 2 years, you probably could do it a lot easier. But doing both premium seating of football and basketball at once, that's quite an undertaking for an athletic department.
Can I interject with a question of my own here, since it's been a
Sure.
hot topic on the board? What would you do with student seating in the Coliseum if you were in
I'd
charge?
make them as close. I'd make it as close to the floor as I could. That's just me. I think I understand that there's a lot of dollars you can derive from having people who pay for those seats. I get that. College students, that's been like a timeless thing for me. It's probably old and antiquated and financially not reasonable, but I would probably try to get the students as close to the floor as I could. Now, what would you do if they're not getting filled up? You probably have a deadline. Like if they're playing on a Wednesday, if student tickets aren't claimed by like, I don't know, Tuesday noon, open to the public. I'd find some way to do that. But personally, me, if you're asking me, I would have students as close to the floor as I could. It's about them. It makes the game a lot more fun.
And where would you go under the basket or on one of the sides? Because that's been the
Man,
argument on the board. I don't know if you saw it the other day, but a little bit of disappointment on the was it the Wednesday night game? It was the midweek game after Iowa State. And it wasn't obviously not just the students everywhere, like the whole arena, the whole Coliseum was not the same atmosphere, was not filled to the brim like it was on Saturday for Iowa State. So it was a big discussion about what to do with students.
Yeah, that might be one of those things where I probably would try to put a deadline in because you move people closer to the floor, and if they don't show up, it looks bad. Well, then find a way to use those seats somehow too. They have a good thing. I don't know if they still do like a lottery system or points based thing where if you're not using it, you're not getting loyalty points. You're not going to be rewarded. You could do something along those lines. But now, as far as the location, you can really be effective um, close to the floor. I think behind the basket would be most distracting for a team or some sort of a wrap around. That would be good. The baseline, just where it used to be on the baseline behind the announcers, was pretty effective. That just looked good on television too. I don't know that it matters so much, Chris. I'd find a way, and then you could tinker with it year after year or something like that if you want to. But I just think close to the floor looks good, sounds good, and makes the environment a little bit better. The trouble is there's gonna be a handful of games of year where that doesn't matter because they're not on campus, or it's a 9 o'clock start on a Tuesday. And that's still not an easy place to get to. Never mind get back from for students. So there are some things there that aren't solely on the students. But yeah, going to the games, if it's about them, they probably should follow through on that. They don't always do.
Next question from GD Full. How different would this men's basketball team be right now with Tucker and Stone in the rotation?
Significantly.
Yeah.
Um, DeVries for sure. Like you've seen like the it's almost 5-on-4 at times up there because there's one less person to guard and not that it's uneven or they're putting like an inept offensive person out there, but he commanded such attention that you couldn't do it to one or the other, him or Small, because they're both out there. But now when there's only one out there, you have to devote extra attention to Small. You couldn't do that before because they played off each other pretty well, and they would have gotten better and better and better at that. We never saw where that two-man game really could have gone because it ended so early. Stone, I'm not sure. Like I think he's a shooter and probably maybe apart from Small could go and get his. Like give him the ball and say, "Listen, can you make something happen?" Like end of a shot clock stuff. Not that that would be the way you use him, but he has that type of talent to score the ball. And he could have come off screens. He could have run around screens. He could have been good with the ball in his hands or with the catch. And again, so much stuff happens right now where people are standing and watching and waiting. That if you get a guy who can get it and do something, that makes a big difference.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. The biggest struggle for this team is offense right now. If it's not Javon Small putting on in godly performance, West Virginia's offense can't hang with anybody else. Almost everybody else on the team requires Small to set them up. They have to get a play to set them up to get something. They have to get somebody else has to facilitate their action. Not for DeVries, not for Tucker, excuse me, and not for Jaden Stone either. So I've like it would make all the difference in the world, I think, for both of them, even just one of them. Um, again, Tucker DeVries, we've seen his ability to be the centerpiece of this offense, to not only score it, but to distribute it, to kind of draw attention from everyone else. And like you said, Stone, we haven't seen him. He hasn't been on the court, obviously, but what he was known for was his ability to score on his own, to score in bunches, to create his own shot. How many people can do that on West Virginia's roster right now? One, like Javon Small, that's it right now. So adding him, even if it was a guy off the bench for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, that could be the difference in a couple of wins and losses right now for West Virginia. So obviously, big difference.
My question for you, real quick. You've seen what teams have done, like really kind of blitz ball screens, squeeze that space so Small can't get through and can't get a pass around or over or shot over. I don't know that Kansas State did anything exotic or even did that. They didn't. I mean, people are like, oh, doubling the ball. I don't think they doubled the ball a whole lot either. They did some
Yeah.
stuff where they jumped them, but I don't know that that was like some crazy Javon Small defense. It seemed like after a while they're just kind of like, I don't think this guy's going to beat us, and I really don't think his four teammates are going to beat us tonight. Is that did Kansas State look the same or did it look different through your eyes?
No, I'm with you. It wasn't as aggressive as maybe some of the other teams have done in attacking small because I felt like in other games that it was a lot of, like you said, trapping. And once he gave up the ball, then denying the return back to him. So that once he gave up the ball, the offense was basically dead. It's like he wasn't getting it back and nobody else could really score on their own. So I didn't feel like Kansas State was as aggressive. And obviously it didn't feel like they didn't feel like they needed to be either. The place where I actually honestly think they might have worn him out more was on the other end of the court because it seemed like they went out of their way to try to get
Yeah.
him in the ball screens and get him involved in these ball screens and make him work and work and work and work on defense. And again, like you're asking this guy to play 36 to 40 minutes and run the offense and play the best defense. Like at some point, you're just going to wear him out.
Yep.
Next question, Ear Traveler. When will we hear something about the spring game schedule and format?
Uh, it's like 17th on their list right now, right?
Yeah.
Um, the plan initially before they changed coaches was Saturday in April. I forget the date, 28, 29. I forget. Um, I'm going to election after that, so I just know that was somehow circled in my head. Don't complain. From there, I mean, I guess they could keep that. It probably would make sense to keep that date the same. I think it works well with the transfer portal too. Um, Format, boy, I don't know. Like again, Rodriguez was kind of crafty before. Like he was the guy that the first one I remember that was like letting fans call plays and do stuff like that, where it kind of became like an exhibition more than an actual game. We think about the spring game now as some kind of like fan friendly event or whatever, but like people were actually trying to play it 17, 18 years ago, and he was doing something different back then. So I imagine he'll have something up his sleeve. It'll be very fan friendly. Like we talked about, should that be the highest attended spring game of all time here? It should be close. It should be in the conversation. You should be talking about it. So the sooner the better they start talking about that, that's fine. Which not that they're behind schedule on that, but I think if they had a plan, they got people thinking about it, talking about it, you'd have a really good attendance figure there. But I haven't had a chance to really talk to anybody about stuff like that lately. Anything has been like who's being hired and who's being recruited, not like how are you going to run a program. Hopefully that day comes soon.
Next question, BNWVU 72. I'm just going down the list now. We are going to get to your what's wrong with the transfer portal rankings questions. Don't worry. I know those were very highly upvoted. We will get there. BNWVU
Oh,
72.
you
Yeah. uh, it's funny because on my screen we're vertical. So I'm like, who are you pointing at over there?
no.
You blaming on you making somebody else do it? There we go. Yeah, me. Um, I don't know how it's going to show up on YouTube, but or how anybody that's just listening to the podcast is going to know what we're talking about. Um, Realistic expectations for football post winter portal window. We can get into more detail on this because we got another question from Tagodwin. We're going to take your question, Tagodwin, in the 3-minute video later in the week, but just generic kind of real like what do you think? Like bowl game, bowl eligible minimum?
It has to be. It's such a huge part of the job now. Like roster management is, I mean, that's part of the actual interview process. How would you do this? Hey, we have 60 holes in the roster. Help me fill in the blanks. That's part of the conversation you have now. And how would your front office look to do this? And how would you structure player acquisition and all that? That's part of the plan. And if you go out and if you don't nail it, okay, that's fine. But if you flop, you flop. That's part of the job. And I'm not gonna high horse anybody here. People are gonna roll their eyes at like that year zero thing. That might have been a thing before. It's just not anymore. It's not to me and it's not to other people because you can rebuild so quickly. Like you can play for a national championship in the Big 12 in your first year. Might be harder now, but that just happened a couple years ago, right? There's 4 teams, but you still got in. If you're not winning 6 games, especially with the schedule being a little bit watered down, like they've been asking for, not they've been, but like the head coach had been asking for, you kind of built in another win there. It's just I don't think that anything less than 6 wins is remotely acceptable at this point. And again, it's not to put like undue, unnecessary, uninvited pressure, but a big part of hiring Rich Rodriguez, and this is more to champion the cause than to critique it, is that he would have the money available to go get transfers. And they have. Like, they've clearly outbid some people for these guys they've been getting lately. They're not outbidding like blue bloods, but they're outbidding people they have to outbid to get players. So that's worked. But like, if that part works, you have to be able to coach them and to win games. And if that doesn't work, then you haven't followed through in part A. I think part A you can give a thumbs up to. They've done their job by getting some good players in spots they needed, quantity as well as quality, no question. Now, what will happen in the games, we don't know. But if this next part doesn't follow through, then that's not a good first year. It's just not. And like, you don't get a do-over. Like, oh, that's year zero. We'll start over. Because one, we saw people forgot very quickly with Neil Brown, and number two, everybody's doing this from one year to the other. So if you can't do it because it's your first year and you got to do it the second year, everybody's doing this to some extent now. Like you're turning over your roster pretty severely, pretty regularly now. It might not be 60 players, but you're not just doing like 25 out, 25 in like you used to now. So the amount of players going out, going in, you have to be able to manage. And I just think if you don't find ways to win, that's not a good. People are gonna be happy at all with 5-7. So with an easier schedule, like a bowl game plus 1 or 2 wins, should probably be what I think people are looking for.
I'm glad you brought up that last part about not being able because you if you were Rich Rodriguez, you have completely and totally remade this roster. Like, I mean, what was it, 30 some transfers at this point, a handful of extra guys, late additions via high school and junior college. And guess what? You can't be, if this doesn't work out, what's to say it's going to work out next year? Because the vast majority of the guys that you added are seniors. So you will be, no matter what, doing this again next year. Whether you win 11 games or 1 game, you will be doing this again next year. So if you sucked at it this year, if you weren't able to get the good personnel, if you weren't able to turn things around this year, who's to say it's going to happen next year? And then you're going to have to do it the year after that and after that. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's the key part here. This is the new normal. This is it. You are going to have to add 30, 40, 50 guys every single offseason. And if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be long for this job.
Yep.
And so I think, the setting expectations for this team, bowl game, bare minimum. I mean, obviously, they're not going to get fired after 1 year, but it's going to increase the pressure moving forward. Well, I say obviously not getting fired, but I don't think that's happening. All right, here we go. We got 2 questions on this. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to give everybody credit here. Chestnuts wants to know who makes the transfer ratings for 24/7 Sports and why are they so suspect? C Hush, why are the transfer rankings so unbelievably consistent and how can 24/7 fix it? Gives a couple of examples. Um, to answer the question, the first part of the question, it's a panel of scouts that do it. Several, yeah, Mike's going to sit back and take his hands off this. Um, but it's a handful, it's a panel. Several people do this together. They come to an agreement on whatever the ranking should be and put it out there. Do I agree with all the rankings that West Virginia transfers got? Nope, I do not. I don't agree with all the high school rankings, but that's the point. I don't see these guys as much as some of these other guys with the scouting, and that's what I'll tell high school recruits. Hey, why do I have a 3-star? Hey, why do I get ranked higher? I don't handle the rankings. My involvement in the rankings with transfers pretty much is nil, like none, because the guys that are paid to do that can see these guys. They can get the data, they can get the PFF grades, they can see the film, they can see the stats, all that stuff. The high school stuff, I will give input if I see high school guys at West Virginia camps or some other camp. I will say, hey, here's what I saw from this kid. Here's somebody he reminds me of. And if I have the information available, like a 40 time, a vertical, whatever, I will share that as well. And then I take my hands are up. I'm out. Um, the transfer rankings. I'm trying to wrap around my head because I know it's a combination of your ability and also your eligibility left. So if you 2 guys are equal and one guy has 1 year of eligibility left, but the other guy has 3 years of eligibility left, the guy with 3 years of eligibility is going to have a higher ranking than the guy with 1 year of eligibility. Can't say again that I agree with a lot of things. I mean, I hate the idea that Carson Beck is the #1 transfer in our rankings right now. I don't agree with that. He's got 1 year of eligibility left, and he was not very good this year, to be quite frank. Like, I mean, he had a stretch there where I think he threw like 9 interceptions in 4 games or something. And the 2 games that the team lost during the regular season were because of him. And I'm not sure there were many games that they won because of him. So having him at the top, I don't agree with. But I, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Critiquing the rankings, I never enjoy it. It's not fun. I can't imagine it's fun to make the rankings to begin with. I'm just surprised so many people care about the transfer rankings in particular. Mike, you got some thoughts?
How many people are on the panel?
Um,
Small
is
number,
it?
right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it three? It might be
I
three,
would say.
five.
Yeah.
I would
So
say I know for high school it's like five. But
now you're not asking for or efforting a review of every player, a rating for every player, but let's just say half. How many players in the portal?
yeah, exactly.
It's difficult work to get through, I'm sure. And then sooner or later, your eyes just roll back in your head. You're like, this square in looks just like that square in. This 10 catch game for 160 yards and a touchdown looks just like this 10 catch 162 touchdown game. Like I imagine it's very difficult work. Might need more people, I don't know, but at some point you're still going to have that same blending fatigue. I think just so many players and so much work to do.
Well, I was gonna say, let me answer in a different way for those that are they're probably looking at, hey, well, who's who are we talking about specifically, or who are they talking about specifically as far as our fans, the WVU fans go? Like who should be ranked higher? I
Sure.
know some guys, and I agree with some of these things, like Chase Wilson. And here's part of it. I wonder, I haven't asked, maybe I should. Like, how much does like, is the high school ranking a starting point? Do you have to take that into a starting point for this? Because like Chase Wilson, for example, that was the first example given by C. Hush in his question. Um, multi-year starter, 200 some tackles, and gets an 85. And then there's another linebacker, Ashton Woods, who redshirted, has 0 snaps, and got an 86. Again, Woods has 4 years of eligibility remaining. Wilson's in his last one. So I do believe that plays part of it. Also, Woods started out with what, an 88 in high school, and Wilson started out as an 80. So Wilson has moved up since in college. Woods has moved down, and they met somewhere in the middle. I don't know if high school starting points should count for one, but he would be somebody I would look at as being ranked higher. Because again, like Carson Beck's the number one guy. He's only got 1 year of eligibility remaining. Your middle linebacker is not as important as a quarterback. Close, but I still think somebody like Wilson should be ranked a little higher. Michael Coates, he's got an 87. I think he's the second highest rated kid in the class. I think he should be ranked a little higher. Jamori Robinson, I mean, he's conference player of the year. He's an 88. It's one of those. I'm like, hey, that might be a 4-star guy. Like Robinson and Coates to me are 4-star guys as far as like the transfer rankings are going. Those are guys that ranked nationally amongst the best, like with PFF marks, with their statistics, with their accolades. Those are two guys that I think should definitively be ranked higher.
I think that to push back a little bit, I think that your high school ranking should matter if you were closer to the start than the finish
Okay.
to some degree, because sometimes you'll have reclamation projects and it's probably more specific at some positions than others. So, for example, if you pull in um, a defensive lineman who was a 4-star and like a 90 grade a couple years ago, and he hasn't played, he's been hurt, he's just been in the wrong scheme. But you get him here and you get him in the right scheme. Let's say like a Fatorma Moba kind of a thing. I know it's not the same identity, but someone who's just better in a certain scheme than another. And he was not a 4-star or a 90 grade. But if you found somebody who was playing the wrong scheme, he's an even and he's playing an odd, but he was a 94-star, highly recruited, just went to the wrong school or got the wrong defensive coordinator. There's still something there to work with, but that's been so long ago, right? If you did that more recently, I think you could put some value into that. I do think your high school stuff matters because we talk about this a bunch, like these reclamation projects, and even in the NFL, like, they know who 5-stars were. And like that guy was good. What happened? Can we get it out of him? Maybe he's not a first day pick or a second day pick, but an undrafted free agent, a late round pick, because he was talented and they knew about him when he was in high school. Like what went wrong? You can do that. I think you have to have some sort of relevancy in college, which is much closer to your high school career than in the NFL. So probably more so for the redshirt freshman linebacker, his high school stuff may matter more so than the fifth year senior linebacker. But that doesn't really solve the problem that we have here because that like one guy has actually played and earned a higher ranking. The other guy hasn't played and lost a point off his ranking too. So that doesn't matter there too. But I do think there is some relevancy to how good you were in high school. And if you haven't been able to prove it over 5 years, okay, you can chip away at that. But if it's been just 1 year, 2 years, if you're injured, you're redshirted, you're in the wrong scheme, you aren't that far from being a really good player and it can come back sooner, I would think. And with more years to get back to that high school projection.
Next question. Crawdaddy 2655 says, will Wellesley be in or out for the Houston game on Wednesday? That is a
Both.
ins insider for the VIP members on here. Does Wellesley ever start in? We love you, Wellesley, but I wonder if you ever start in. But I've seen you be positive before. You can get there again. I promise. Promise.
Wednesday
Um,
might not be the game for him
yeah, Wednesday might not be the
to run
day
that
for anybody,
up.
but that's okay. Um, To Godwin, again, you're next on the list here. You're gonna be a 3 minute video with your reasons why WVU football win or lose. Um, Daddy Wren. I don't know why Daddy Wren is asking us this question. I feel like he should know the answer already, but has there been any insight given into our NIL situation? How much are we paying for our top players?
No insight yet. Just haven't had a chance to talk to anybody, and the people that I could talk to are like, "Can we do this when we can come up and get some air?" Which I understand completely. Like they've been pretty busy, so I would say a lot, and that there is new money, and they have probably spent more on singular players this year than ever before. I'm speaking in general terms here, but I think that's probably a pretty easy thing to say, and they probably spent more collectively to acquire players than they have before. I think the bill for the past, as far as retaining players, is probably pretty high. I'm not sure what that number would be this year because they can only retain so many players, right? So many left. But I would think of their expenditures this year for players on like single item expenses, like single player expenses, but also the collective money spent. I think those are probably higher than ever before.
You know what, to Godwin, you're going to sweep the 3 minute video this week. Congratulations, because your other question about position groups, we'll take that one too. So,
Oh,
unless Mike, unless you wanted to touch on it today, you looked excited about that question. No?
I like the question, but it's a good 3 minute topic for sure.
Okay. Worky Quokka, who may or may not be an alias of a band poster, but that's another story for another day. Near halfway point of the men's basketball conference season. Would you have taken 500 at this point in the preseason? Let's start with that question. Yes, no?
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, I mean, if I looked at the schedule, I would have been like, oh, man, if they can get 4 out of 8 here, that'd be pretty good. Because I thought Arizona was good, I thought Houston was good, I thought Kansas was good, and I just didn't think they'd be able to win all these road games.
Yeah.
Um, so that would have been fine with me. At the start of Big 12 play, if you had said 4-4, I'd be like, yeah, no
Mhm.
DeVries, no Stone, you're probably wearing down. You get 4 wins, and you got to play Texas, or excuse me, Kansas, Houston, and Arizona. That's pretty tough. Yeah, I would have taken that for sure. So yeah, perspective I think is a valuable commodity right here.
Yeah, what was Arizona in the preseason? Were they ranked top 10 in the like preseason poll?
They were top 15, I'm sure. I know that, but their net and their computer stuff has always been higher than the number next to their name for whatever reason. Always.
Yeah. Well, the Arizona, yeah, no, AP top 25, number 10.
10? Okay.
So preseason, if you would have told me they were playing the number one, Kansas, number four, Houston, number five, Iowa State, and number
Oh
10,
God,
Arizona.
I forgot Iowa State.
Yeah. So four of the first 8 games are against preseason top 10 teams. If you would have told me we went 4-4, I would have said, man, that's great. Because like you said, yeah, maybe you're not winning those four, but that means you're sweeping the other 4 games, including a
Uh,
couple road games, which I would never have assumed. So yeah, preseason 4-4, absolutely would have taken it. Like you noted, pre-Big 12, even after the hot start, still taking it because of the lack of DeVries and Stone. Um, Next part of that question. Biggest pleasant surprise, non-Javon Small category, and biggest disappointment, non-Tucker injury category.
Eduardo Andre,
Mm-hmm.
my my I don't know how to say it, but I think I've said it here before. If not, I said online. Like he doesn't strike you as a great basketball player, but he's great at what he does. When he's what they ask him to do, he's really good at. It. And when he's on, they're pretty good. And he can get pulled off the rails sometimes too. I get that, but I don't think I think people thought they were going to be like a donut this year and have nothing in the middle. Hansberry's not a five. I understand that, but that's been a plus acquisition, I think, and not celebrated at all. And people are like, this guy was where he did what, and he's given them what they needed for sure in different roles too, Chris. So that's what's important, I think. Give me time on this one here. What's your most pleasant surprise?
Um, Honestly, my most pleasant surprise, like, well, I would have taken Andre as well, but I like what I've seen from Hansberry, and it hasn't been perfect. It's kind of been inconsistent, but I see pieces here, and he's young. He's still got multiple years of eligibility left, so this isn't one of those one and done guys. And you're like, yeah, he came in and averaged 9 points and 5 rebounds, and that was it. And he was gone. I mean, transfer portal era, he might be gone, but he's a guy that has 3 years, he's a sophomore. So he's still got 2 more years of eligibility remaining. This could just be the beginning for him. I think he's played at times bigger than what he actually is,
Mhm.
which has been helpful. So I see some potential with him. Again, it's just a start. Like he's being put in a position where I don't think he's quite ready for it yet. But that was a pleasant surprise that he was more because I think people when Hansberry and Sincere Harris committed, I was like, let's slower roll here because both of these guys went to Illinois and didn't play big roles, and even redshirted. So it was like, hey, just who knows if they're actually going to be able to contribute, and they can contribute for sure. So I think that would be a pleasant surprise for me. And disappointment, I mean, DeVries' injury, that was a disappointment, but I don't know how you're disappointed in injury. Same with Stone. Like that was somebody that I was excited about as being like that guy off the bench that could really put in some points when you needed it. But player wise, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not disappointed in you, Mike. I'm not disappointed in you. You're
I'm
fine.
I'm I'm disappointed they haven't gotten more out of Aris Elizovic.
Hmm.
I don't know what there's there, but like they need like the extra body, extra big. And that's a guy that I think could come in and just throw himself around for a couple minutes. Maybe he doesn't do much, but if you look at his numbers when he played some Division I schools in Canada, he did okay. So what happened there? And again, there may be a really good explanation. I just don't know that one. So that's kind of a curiosity, maybe slash disappointment. Um, and then not to be the injury thing because I know that was kind of off limits, but like disappointed in the disclosure of stuff. Like, what's going on? Is this that an absolute medical red shirt? And like, there's like this weird satisfaction and pride about they're getting better. I get that, but like, are they practicing? Why aren't they with the team? Um, is he shut down for the year? All that stuff, and like, you just kind of got in the company line for a while. And I know, just believe me, I know that certain things are not our business. I get that, but yes, this guy is practicing. Yes, he's away from the team because of a personal matter. It's kind of weird when you don't see Jaden Stone on the bench. It is. It just is. And here's the thing I'm not comfortable with. Like these guys are getting paid now. They're not like regular college students. So like I understand HIPAA and FERPA and all that stuff. I don't need that lecture, but I think the rules are bending a little bit now, and I think fans might become antsy about this guy's not on the bench. This guy isn't a bench, but like he played and then he was out for the year. But I don't know that there's a great explanation or some adequate way to cover this stuff anymore because what's old is still old. And what we with this again, like the whole privacy and the thing that the coach doesn't have to tell you anything. The game is different now too. Like I said, these aren't your traditional scholastic players anymore. They're kind of salaried employees. So I wonder what day that if that ever changes. We'll see.
I mean, fans are at some point like, hey, fans, we need your money so we can pay these players. Well, I paid last year, and that guy didn't play, and no one would tell me why. So at some point, if I'm supplying the money, and I get we're moving more towards revenue sharing stuff, but these are going to be questions that asked. And then with the gambling part of it, like again, I think the Big Ten's already made the move to there has to be injury reports. Like the NFL has long been on this that there has to be an injury report released before at certain times before the game to let everybody know what's going on and how long. Um, Again, the Big Ten's already started that. I imagine the Big 12 will not be far behind. And yeah, maybe football's first on that front, but it's going to end up being basketball too, and maybe every sport, I would think.
You feel a lot different about the team if you're like, hey man, Tucker DeVries practiced. Hey, he's taking jumpers. Okay. Or like, yeah, Jaden Stone has left the team. Those are different directions, but it's part of the team. It just is. And it's really hard to nitpick. I understand that, but like if you're asking for a disappointment, I'm always team transparency. Don't think anybody's surprised by that. I also understand that there's going to be roadblocks too. I just wonder if that changes and how.
D. Sprad, what game is Chris going to pay for the Ear Sports tailgate party? Did I sign up for that? I think I
That's what
might
I
have.
heard.
I
That's what
think
I heard. Yeah.
I got a little too excited about how big of a month December was for the site and may have made promises that I'm going to regret 6 months from now, 7 months from now. So we'll see. We'll work on that as we get towards the spring game. Who knows? Maybe it's the spring game, but I want to make sure there's plenty of people there from the site. So if we get a
You know what
good
you should do?
number of people, huh?
You should invite everybody to the spring game and then just not give them details until the day before. Who would do that?
I have no idea, Michael. I have no idea. Um, JAL 1234. You can go back to 2000 and pick one player to solidify this basketball team. You have 24 years to choose from. Who are you bringing to the present team and why?
I have a hard time with questions like this.
Yeah.
So we're talking 24 years. Like my first time, like, oh, Pittsnoggle, because like a stretch five would be pretty fun here. Um, and then I'm like, all right, well, Javon Carter in the backcourt would be pretty cool with Javon Small. Poor Bob Hertz would have no idea what to do with himself with two Javons on the floor at the same time, but we could figure that one out. Um, there's a lot of guys. You're talking a quarter century, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot there. Like I think Mike Gainsey would be a really fun Darren DeVries player, like a wing, like 2-3 guy who you could put in different spots, and his athleticism and his shot making would be fun. There's just so many. Like what would Dior Fisher be like in this? Like if you needed a big in the situation, like, there's a lot. I'm not sure there's a wrong answer. I don't even know what the right answer is though here. Like there's this is a long list of players. Joe, 25 years, man. Like cut it down to like 10 years, maybe like that. This one we could devote like an entire episode or like 1,000 words on. I might even do that just talking to you right now. But so many options, which I guess is a good thing because basketball's been good for a quarter century by and large. Um, I don't know what the answer would be here. Like even like the obvious ones don't pop out.
Well, how about this question for you then? Let me change it up a bit. Do you strengthen your strength or do you strengthen your weakness? Meaning, like you said, do you add Javon Carter to Javon Small? Or do you find that big man that helps fill that void that I feel like's there? Or the other void being like a scorer, like somebody who can just legitimately score buckets from the wing somewhere.
Yeah,
Like
like if you had
that's
like a Jay Sean Page who,
yeah.
you're not disrupting a whole lot of stuff, but he can come off the bench or he can start for you. He can make some threes. He can get you 16 and a half, something like that if he got crazy. Like that would help you out right now too. A Devin Williams would be just a big, massive rebounder. A Kevin Jones, a rebounder that would help you out. But could also help you out on offensive for Jones, defensive for Williams. I think people forget he was a really good defender at the back of that press. So yeah, like I think though, Chris, I just seen what this team has done without a strength. I mean, and like what they've done with weaknesses. Like I just, man, if you just made them level, what could happen? So like, okay, you could overpower one position or one part of your game by adding to your strengths, strengthening your strength, as you said. I would just like to see them play like a level game. Like if they had the deck not stacked against them, what would that be like? So I would try to round out something with it, which would be like, how can you make them bigger, a better rebounding team, a better defensive at the rim team right now? So I'd probably try to go with someone big.
Chicago WRN, your question will be tied into the one of the 3 minute videos as well. I like it. It's just gonna be part of the 3 minute video. Josh Ben 3478. Have many teams had success before with such limited depth on the court?
Oh yeah, Notre Dame. When Notre Dame played West Virginia in the Big East tournament, the year they won, 2010, I think they had six guys, Chris, and they were fairly good. I mean, they played for the Big East in the Big East semifinal, I guess, but they were I don't know what their record was, but I remember they were just devastated by injuries. And they what they would do is they would dribble the ball up, and they would stand there and they would hold the ball until like 12 seconds. They'd run their offense in the final 12 or 15 seconds. It was annoying to watch, right? But like they had no margin. So that's just one example I can think of here, but this is not unusual. It's not. Even like sometimes even good teams will only have like seven players that they'll play,
Yeah,
7, 8 players.
Houston
So it's
this
not
year.
it's yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Um, so it's not unusual. I know it's a good story. It's not unprecedented. It's not like some one-off thing that's happening here. This is something that people deal with quite often, whether it's injuries or scholarship or health or anything like that. So some do it better than others, some do it worse than others.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Houston Kansas game, for instance, this past week. I know I'm
Yeah,
cherry picking
excellent.
one game, but it was something that caught my attention because the Houston, like you may look at their team stats, and you're like, oh, look at all these guys that play. It's because they beat people by 40. And you're like, hey man, get in there and get your 10 minutes. And the guy that you trim some minutes here, give some minutes there. But when it comes down to the games that really matter, you take a look at Houston's rotation, at Kansas's rotation, and they get short. Houston, Roberts, Uzan, and Crier, 40. There's a double overtime game, and Crier played not all 50 minutes, but 48 of the 50, 48, 46, 41. Uh, Tugler, 36 minutes. And then the four other guys kind of split like those remaining minutes, and that was it. And Kansas was the same way. They had one, two, three guys over 44 minutes, and then two guys over 30, and then just three guys kind of split in the last spot. So Yeah, it is not uncommon in the world of college basketball. There's just a limited number of amazing players in basketball, and if you can get a handful, then you kind of try to stretch their minutes as much as they can, especially in the big games. So not
The
unprecedented what West Virginia's dealing with.
2009, 2010 Notre Dame won. They were bubble team. At the end of the season, they won against number 12 Pitt and number 11 Georgetown, Connecticut, and Marquette. Those are both good teams. I don't know how good they were. And then beat Seton Hall and Pitt again in the Big East tournament, made the NCAA tournament. They were 23 and 11. And they had nobody. Like their team was just worn down and beat up and just they got hot at the end. They were playing a certain way. And again, it wasn't fun to watch. Like they lost the NCAA tournament 51 to 50 to Old Dominion. Luke Herringody, Tim Abramitis, Ben Hans, Torrey Jackson, Tyrone Nash, Carlton Scott. And that was pretty much it for their team. Six guys. They played Jonathan Peoples every so often. Um, just did not play a lot of people and somehow won games by playing slow.
Just a handful of questions to round things out here. My dog Major, what are Darren DeVries' options to counter the constant double teams? Opponents are throwing it small. Um, we've seen a little bit of it where they try to have somebody else bring the ball up. That's one way to kind of because the easiest person to double team is either well, when it's not passed to a corner, the easiest person to double team is the person who brings the ball up originally or is coming off of a screen. So if you can have somebody else bring the ball up, that makes it a little more difficult to double team somebody off the ball as long as they're not involved in the screen, which raises another problem for West Virginia that they don't really have anybody else that can initiate the offense. Like, I mean, Harris and Yusufu aren't terrible at it. Tanner's not terrible at it. They're not turning the ball over a ton, but it's just not as effective, efficient, not as threatening when those guys are initiating the offense.
They had him setting a lot of ball screens Saturday, more than I remember. It wasn't constant, and I imagine that takes a toll too. But if he is suddenly setting the screen, the roles reverse, the defense is kind of short circuit a little bit. That's an interesting thing I think he can do because all of a sudden he becomes a roller, a screener who rolls, a screener who dives, a screener who fades, and he becomes different. Especially if he likes to get to that step back, and if you have him stepping back and catching, that's fun. And then Chris, oh man, I really wonder defense. They're not built to press. I know that. But can they pick their spots in the first half? Again, not Wednesday, but can they pick their spots in the first half for a flurry here or there and then cool off? Not just do it when you're down 12 with 6 minutes left in the second half. I don't know, but they've done it enough lately and they practice it. They can't do it a long time. I know that, but I just wonder if that's something that can steal them a couple points here and there because in transition you can't double team them. In broken floors you can't double team them. And if they're and you don't have to get turnovers and steals in the backcourt, but if you're guarding for like 60, 70 feet, that shot clock becomes an ally of yours. So you're playing 6 on 5, right? Instead of 5 on 5. The offense gets expedited. They may take bad shots. They may rush shots. They may not be in position to rebound. All of a sudden, you just get defensive rebounds, which, by the way, they need. And you're in transition. You're running. You're not having to dribble it up against a set offense, excuse me, a set defense that scored from 2 feet away. Again, right before that, too. So can they do something on defense to just create something downhill for their offense? Because that would get Small going for sure.
All right. Next question. Rebels 52. How often will games be on CBS now? And what does the Paramount Plus sign-in offer on the CBS Sports app? Two more games on CBS as of right now, with two more. That would be BYU and TCU with two more games at Baylor and at BYU up in the air on the TV front. CBS Sports Network on the Paramount Plus app. I do believe you still have to have CBS Sports Network as part of your TV package in order to do that. There are discussions to try to make sure CBS Sports Network is included in Paramount Plus moving forward, but I and I'm not privy to that. That's way above my pay grade.
I didn't know any of that stuff, so thanks. Appreciate it.
Um,
I know if you have YouTube TV, you have it. So and
yeah,
there is some sort of a sync up between that and Paramount that like you said you have to have it on your provider. So man, it's really difficult to watch games now. It shouldn't
yeah.
be.
Salty Dog 8159. How do you see the numbers game playing out? A giant tryout evaluation type of spring ball? Pretty
I mean,
much.
I'm not saying it's gonna be Junction Boys. I do think they're gonna let them play and they're gonna be really like a lot of live football, good on good, because they're gonna have I don't know how many people you think will be on campus for the spring.
Well, so it sounds like so a lot of the guys that were walk-ons this past year. Now, some of them hit the portal. Like they didn't do it with a lot of fanfare, but they were not a lot of these guys that were walk-ons were kind of not told anything. Like, hey, you're in, you're out, you're going to be on the roster in the fall. It was just like, hey man, spring ball starts here and when we'll be there. Look forward to meeting you. And so I think for a lot of those guys that were walk-ons last year, they're not guaranteed a spot. And to be quite honest, based off of the numbers of the guys that they brought in, I believe I have the number right now at 101 and the cap is 105.
For the spring,
So
101 players.
101 players right now, scholarship players between returning scholarship players plus high school and junior college signees plus
Wow.
transfer additions. West Virginia is currently at 101 with the cap at 105. So that means for those guys that were walking on last year and stuck around for this spring, because you don't have to go from 120 to 105 until August. So
Right.
these guys are still here. The question is, how many of them are going to have a spot in the fall? Because West Virginia is still recruiting guys. They're still talking to transfers. They're still going to be talking to guys in spring. Now, we also expect guys to leave after the spring. So maybe those numbers all work out with that because they're still, as of now, the transfer portal after spring football. And West Virginia will certainly lose a few guys. Guys are going to try out basically this spring, work out for the new coaching staff for the first time. And some are going to say, yeah, I'm good. I'll probably go check out something else. So the numbers will work out, but I think West Virginia is in a healthier spot than I thought they would be, to be quite honest. I mean, they just added so many guys that I did not think they would get up to the 105 mark or be near it this early. So,
I don't ever remember a number approaching 101 for spring. Never mind that high, but never
well,
approaching
not
that.
well. I mean, there will be 100, but not all of those 101. That includes some high school kids that will not be here till the summer, and a
Okay.
couple transfers that won't be there till the summer. But still, out of those 101
Okay.
scholarship guys, I'm still talking like 90,
It's a huge
85.
number,
Yeah,
big number. Because typically you can't do a lot in the spring because you don't have numbers.
yeah.
Because surgeries, transfers, people haven't enrolled yet, or they are there but they're so new, so you can't do a lot. This will be like a choose your own adventure for the staff because you can do so much in the summer now as far as install and learning. So if you're putting in a new offense, and like I think they'll tell you this too, this offense is not super complicated. Again, not a critique, but like there's certain principles. You pick it up, you build on them, and you go. You can stack plays and confidence pretty quickly. Defense, I'm not sure. I just don't know. Probably a different story. But you can do a lot in the summer now to do that. So is your spring install and your summers were fine, or is your spring sort out who can and who can't, and with some install, and then focus on like the classroom stuff, which is you can't be as physical in the summer. So I don't know what they'll do. This is like a new thing. We did not have this situation when Brown came in because the rules are so different. Um, I don't know. This would be like a probably good question and a good answer, like a philosophical thing from Rodriguez. But I suspect because they can, they will do a lot of live football and a lot of competition in the spring, just so they can start to get some answers about who and how many.
Some at WVU, how many transfers in and out after the spring game? And have you heard of any rumors on current basketball players being recruited? I'll do the real quick on the first one. Let's say probably 5 to 10 out, and then maybe only like five back in, just to again solve the problem we're kind of discussing here, which is the good problem to have if you're West Virginia. That Mike, have you heard of any rumors of current basketball players being? Uh, can we say tampered? Can we say tampered with?
Well, here's the thing: it shouldn't be rumors, man. It should not be. Someone should be soapboxing this. Like if you got a general manager or someone like that, just be like, hey man, I'm going public with this if you keep this up. Just like there's no honor among thieves. Like what are we doing here? Like what I like maybe there's like an unspoken thing you don't out people. That used to be the case. Like when like if you had a player who's committed in basketball, you never really mess with that person. Totally different in football, but basketball kind of had this gentleman's agreement, and like if you stepped over the line, you typically got called out for it too sometimes. I don't know what happened to that. So if someone's on your roster in the middle of January and he's getting tampered with, I would be throwing a fit or I would be leaking it to reporters. That hasn't happened as far as I know. That said, there is no way you're watching what West Virginia's doing and saying, I really like that 6'8" guy who can shoot threes. Let's not talk about him until the season is over, right? This just happens. And like to be frank, West Virginia would be silly to not think about good players that I saw in non-conference play or good players to see in the Big 12 and say, man, that guy looked great on our team. I wonder what we could offer him. Just the way it is now. So like there is no honor among thieves, but I'm not even sure there's thieves anymore, Chris, because this is like so new, so normal that almost everybody's on a 1 year contract. So yeah, like now the interfering with somebody during the season, I would be ticked off if that happened, and I would be telling people about that. I probably would not have a job or be very good at it though. But I would not be happy with somebody messing with my players right now because I don't know how that doesn't become a problem. I just don't know. So if your shooting guard is hearing from a Big 12 school or an SEC school or a Big East school or whatever, I don't know how he doesn't think about that during the season. So I would try to nip that as quickly as I could. And if I had to be public about it, I would. I'm media though, so I like when stuff gets a little bit messy. That might not be the best way to do it, but you got to put your foot down and stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to happen. Like you're going to be offering someone a contract at halftime or in the post game handshake line. You don't need that.
This next question is addressed directly to you, so I'll just ask it and get out of the way. SA year 704. Don't hurt my feelings. It's okay. Mike, you always say that you love a good plan. We all know that what Rich Rod is planning to do on offense, based upon the coaches and players acquired so far on the defensive side, what do you think the plan is to get that side of the ball right?
Uh, Multiple. Again, we've been over this. Like they have some number of interior defensive linemen. We don't think it's enough, but they have some number of guys who are returning and who may get bigger and better and just be in a more favorable position than they were because they're older and more experienced. Then they've gotten out and they've gotten some edge players, which just helps. They need those people who can really scare you from the corner position, like the edge positions. I like that they've kind of added some linebackers and just some depth there. They needed that too. They got some players who have played and who have a couple years left too. What that tells me, Chris, is that they're going to be even front, they're going to be odd front. They're going to be a multiple group up front. I'm not sure how multiple will be in the secondary. It seems like, two corners, three safeties, or two corners, three other defensive backs. That's pretty standard. Are they going to be like a single high safety team? They're going to be a two deep safety team, a three deep safety team. Well, maybe that's when the multiple part comes in. I just don't know how reasonable that is, or even like how unusual that is too. So that probably isn't part of the conversation. I just see a team that up front is not going to let you get comfortable as an offense at the strike zone. Like they're gonna change the pictures for you. I'm not saying it's down to down, even odd, but it could be series to series, quarter to quarter. They might go even just to have two outside pass rushers on like a third and long. I think there's a way for them to be competently. Um, I hate the word multiple, but like just multiple, like just able to do a bunch of different things because they've added the personnel, and then just the length and speed of their like corner slash nickel positions. I don't know, Chris. Maybe they'll send some pressure from the secondary. Maybe just once a season, maybe they'll do that because that was just a non-existent part of the defense last year. And if you're only worried about heat coming from in between the hash marks, whatever, you got a lot easier in pass protection.
All right, I will at least start on this one. Cobb 0012. How does the transfer class compare to Browns the last few years? What if you take into account the transfers out? Similar-ish the last couple years, maybe, at least as far as like the in and the out. I think the term we used or he used was ledger. Because the early years, the 2021 and 2022, those were abysmal. I mean, West Virginia was losing 20, 30 guys, 20, 25 guys, and they were key contributors, starters at wide receiver, starters in the secondary, their quarterback, their right tackle, their linebackers, and they would bring back like five guys. I think 2021 was like they brought in four transfers and lost 20. The next class was they lost 25 and brought in 12. That's why things got as bad as they did. Now they changed the philosophy, started going almost. They did a better job of retention after that. Some of the guys they lost were not quite as consequential, if you will. And they did a better job of bringing in guys or bringing in more guys. And again, now what is it? I think it's like 30 out and 30 some in. So it's almost a one for one as far as the transfer portal goes with this class. And again, it's everybody's so much better. There are a couple key guys here for sure. Absolutely. But a lot of it's the same stuff, like, the same profile, if you will. It is guys that are elite talents at lower levels that put up big stats at Division II, at FCS, even maybe some group of five guys. And then it's a handful of guys that were backups at Power Four programs. That's the same profile that Neil Brown was recruiting last year and the year before. So much, much better than 2020 to 2022 Neil Brown, but pretty similar to 2023 and 2024 Neil Brown.
How many offensive linemen do they have, Chris?
Like for
Four
the like that they
from the
brought
from the
in.
portal.
Oh yeah,
Martin,
yeah, yeah, four.
um,
Martin, Chemo, the LSU kid,
McConioli,
um,
Walter,
Crawford from
Young Bear.
Arkansas, Walter Youngbear, and Wyatt Minor from Youngstown State. So five, right? Am I
Okay.
missing somebody?
That's have they pulled in five collectively in the past in the portal?
All right.
It's very hard to do. Like good offensive linemen either stay put or go to the highest bidder.
Oh, and Will
Um,
Reed. Sorry, I forgot about him because he's not enrolling
Geez,
till the
yeah.
summer. So six.
So listen, that to me is a triumph for this particular offseason, this transfer portal ring around the rosy because it's hard to do. Like I'm gonna bet you that the I know it's a weird thing, but like the transfer from Princeton might be the highest paid portal player on the in that group we're just talking about. Like, I mean, I'm not saying on West Virginia's roster that probably goes to you can probably guess who, Jamari Robinson, but that's pay to get here, and they did. Like that was a high value player. Walter Young Bear, if he was later in the process, I'm not. Does he end up here? I don't know. Maybe, but that's a guy that a lot of people are going to want to get their hooks into and try to get him here. It's just very hard to get offensive linemen in the transfer portal, and they've gotten six, five we think pretty highly of. I just don't know a whole lot about Wyatt Minor yet. A lot about Robbie Martin yet either. You're talking about three or four guys that you're pretty confident can play sooner than later. That's rare. And again, I'm trying to think in my head. Nestor, um, which is a pretty good one. But how many other offensive linemen from the transfer portal did they get? Now, granted, their plan was to recruit and develop, and they got lucky's not the right word. They got a nice break by having some in-state kids, Frazier and Milam, that were happy to come here and then spend time here. They lost more players out of the portal on the offensive line than they probably brought in during Brown's 6 years. And I honestly like I'd like to, probably should have done this homework in my head, but did Brown recruit six transfer portal offensive linemen in his 6 years? I'm sure he tried, maybe not at once because they need to this year, but that's a big number, and they have some quality players there too. It probably cost some money. It certainly took some dedication to do, but that's just a hard thing to do. And that again, that to me makes this like a much more successful spin than you probably realize. You might like it, but when you start to look deep at what they've done and how they've done it, like that performance right there is pretty impressive.
Last set questions, I guess, coming in from Luke Zoolander. If you were WVU basketball coach, A, what rotation changes or adjustments to playing time would you make going forward? Let's start there.
I probably try to get Tenor with small a little bit more often. The trouble is you've got to get small off the floor at some point every so often. But I think that the points you're making about getting him into off ball situations, that just keeps some gas in the tank for him too. It doesn't help small defensively. That's a problem there too. I would certainly think about just ways to do that. I would not start Hansberry over Andre because I think Hansberry kind of gives you some punch off the bench on offense, which you need some shooting, some scoring if you need to. Then here's the thing, Chris. I don't know who else you move around. Like you're talking about seven. I said I'm kind of disappointed they haven't got more out of Alezovic. I'm not sure now's the time to start. Maybe you can get him in a little bit here and there and build him up, but I'm not suggesting that. I was just saying that I'm kind of surprised or disappointed that they haven't got more out of him. Um, but it's a short list of short fixes, and I just don't have a lot of great ones there. More tenor for sure, and then I just don't know that I would do more or that even you could do more right now.
All right. So we're gonna differ a little bit. I guess this
Okay.
is gonna make us differ because I'm picking a different person. But I want to see more consistent time for Yasufu. Like I want to see what like feel. I mean, it's been his time, his play has been inconsistent, but his time has been inconsistent as well. I mean, he's going from playing 28 minutes to the a couple like 11 to 27 to 17 to 28 to 17 to 26 to 13. He has the pedigree, I think, to be a very good basketball player. And he might also have that steadying hand that you might need from a senior laden guard or from a senior guard that can help steady that offense, get things started. So I would like to see him. I'd at least go like, hey, the next 4 games, like he's going to play 25 to 30 minutes. And I'm just going to see what happens. If it doesn't work out, then I'm back to more of a youth movement, going with more guys, like more minutes for Sincere Harris, more minutes for KJ Tenner. But I think I need to see what he can do if I give him consistent minutes for 4 or 5 games in a row.
Trouble with him though is that the I don't disagree, but like I'm not sure he gives you offensively, and maybe that's the thing you don't know yet. But man, his things are rough. Um, but that's a guy who can make threes and get you points in a hurry. Sometimes if he gets hot, he's not going to get hot in the bench. So that's not a bad idea at all, actually.
Would you impose a no 3-point shooting ban on Sincere Harris? It's
Um,
rude. It's rude.
uh, uh, I would maybe like a shot clock rule. Like if you're in the top half of the shot clock, maybe you got to pass it. And then also if like you're near the end of the shot clock, maybe you should pass to somebody who's got a better chance. So he's got like a 6 second window of like in between like I don't know. Let's see here, uh, 14 and 8 seconds he can shoot the three. That's it.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on here because in his 1 year at Illinois, he redshirted the last season, but the year before that, he shot 32% while taking 1.2 per game. That's not great. It's not the worst in the world. It might be like second on the team this year for West Virginia. So eh. This year, he shot twice as many. He's shooting 2.2 per game and only made 9.8%. We're in single digits right now, single digit percentage shooting 3 points. Well, he has a history already that he is capable, not good, not great, capable. So I don't like I like your no shooting in the top half of the shot clock ban, but need to find his spot because like getting him even just back to like 25%, like this team's different. Like everything's different. And so I'd like to see them try to find a way to get him going. I just don't know if you can keep sacrificing possessions right now, given all the other struggles on offense.
What are his season long numbers now? Four for what?
Uh,
Is it four?
it just closed it. He is, what is it, total three, 4 for 41.
Okay. He's made threes in 2 games, Chris.
Yeah.
And they were in back-to-back games. So um
It was red hot
that's probably a
that
problem.
week. Um, yeah, I mean, in the previous that first full season at Illinois, he took 41 threes and he made 13 of them. And that's 32%. So like he's shot the same amount of threes this year as he did 2 years ago, but just not making them.
Tough.
Final question. Finally, we got there. After game 8, once Tucker was out with Stone already out, should coach Darren DeVries have asked, that's in quotation marks or asterisks, Nave and or Oyedier to play this season?
I would imagine Oyedier was probably told or promised he would redshirt. Just it doesn't make sense to play him, and I'm not sure he helps you. Um, Nave is an interesting question. That redshirt kind of surprised me, especially as preemptive as it was, unless he really wanted to do this, or sorry, it's 2025. He does not want to burn a year at a place he's not going to be next year. Um, that's a possibility too, perhaps unspoken. So, and that's projecting. That's unfair. So I'm just saying we don't know this one here. So if what this question probably presents is that everybody's on good terms and they all plan on being back here next year and there were no promises made and no one's thinking of leaving, whatever. Um, should one or both have done something for the team? Whew. I think Nave would probably help you out a little bit here. Again, I don't know about Oyedier or Odair, but Nave would probably help you out because he had some moments last year and he can shoot and score and rebound a little bit from those spots. You figure it would be onward and upward once he got some playing time. Um, that's a hard thing though. Once you talk yourself into not playing and you've missed about a quarter of a season, all of a sudden I want to make up for lost time or I want to change my plan or everything I have my heart and mindset on I'm not going to do. That's a hard thing to do, but it would have to be the player's decision. I don't think a coach can actually go and I mean he can ask, but the player's got to do it. Be a hard thing to do for a coach, probably a hard thing for a player too.
Okay. I mean, I agree with everything you just said there, so I don't have much to add. I don't know how much impact really, yeah, the big man's going to make, but it's just the spot that they're in. There's not only so many things you can do about it right now. So I agree. Um,
And to the point, like, what's the difference between Jake Auer and Ofri Nave?
right.
Not the same player I get, but like they can kind of get at least the minutes that they're probably going to give Nave. Maybe Ofri's a little bit better. I mean, he is um, certainly defensively, but the offensive part, the shooting, the threat, I, Auer gives you that, and they tried and it didn't work, and it just didn't fit with what they were doing. So, granted, 8 games ago, maybe it makes more sense than it does right now too.
Okay. Well, Mike, I
Or
think
10 games ago now, I guess.
yeah, over an hour. People have asked us to stop putting time limits on the podcast. There you go. This is what you get.
You're
You just
welcome.
get us
Yeah.
talking for even longer. So you're welcome.
All right. Well, since there's
Again,
nothing
there's what, two
left to
more
be,
questions. We'll get to them with 3-minute videos on Wednesday and Friday. Mike, what do we got? We get Darren DeVries on Tuesday, right?
yeah,
Before the
I think
game.
questions will be asked. I don't know if we'll
Uh,
ask the hard questions, Chris. Media doesn't do that, but just like, hey man, what's up? How do you get this right again? Like, I know you can't do anything, but like, what can you do? It's a weird question to ask, but that's got to be the most frustrating thing. Like, I don't
right.
think these are unexpected or sudden problems, but the solutions just don't exist, and you can't grow taller, and you can't just add a player right now too. So I wonder how they're dealing with this, and is it just a slump? Like, what if Powell makes 4 threes, and all of a sudden Small isn't shooting? Gosh, what is it? Like 25% from three in conference play, something like that. Like all of a sudden things get different. Then trouble is that team Wednesday is going to make it very difficult. So yeah, maybe we'll be back here before too long and try to figure out what's going on. Maybe we have no idea how to even answer that ourselves. Until then,
Right.
though, I'm Mike Kasaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.